There's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to start in immigration. And the immigration minister says Ottawa is preparing to create a path for citizenship for hundreds of thousands of people who have lived and worked in Canada illegally for years, starting with construction workers. Oh, yay. So if you're an illegal construction worker, soon you'll get to be not illegal anymore and you'll get to pay taxes and things or whatever. This is, again, not a solution, not a way to fix the problems that have been created. This cements the problems that have been created and makes it difficult to fix them. David, and he's UK, he's talking about Nigel Farage, and we're going to watch Nigel. He's got a minute-long clip here. But Dave says, Nigel's right, and it's a literal invasion. However, legal migration dwarfs channel migration. We are under existential threat, and it happened under an allegedly conservative government. There isn't one government in the world, and I don't think there's any government in waiting. Like, you could look at Mr. Poilievre and the CPC as a government in waiting almost. If you look at the polls and believe them and look at the seat counts and believe them, you could make an argument that it's just a matter of time. Trudeau's on his way out, Poilievre's on his way in. So government in waiting. I think that every government in waiting and every current government is compromised by whatever entity is controlling all of this forced migration into the UK, into Canada, and the cultural shifts, the cultural changes, all of it is bigger than our government level, I think. And if you had a situation where somehow, and I've said this before, but you had a patriotic government elected somehow, then that patriotic government, the leader of that patriotic government, would be ushered into a room and told that if you don't play ball, if you don't continue these things, your country is going to suffer economic decline like nobody's ever seen before. And maybe you get shown a history lesson that teaches you the ways of the world rather than what we think the ways of the world are, right? And then all of a sudden, boom, back to the same old thing. It may take, a bullet to the gut, Ronald Reagan style, but eventually the leaders realize that they're over a barrel, so to speak, and they play ball, right? And I think that we've seen that over and over and over again. So it's one way or another. And if they don't play ball, then the economic destruction comes. Trump didn't play ball, right? He got mostly peaceful protests and chop zones and people burning down post office and saying this is a peaceful protest. Like, I don't know what you mean, arson. That is the kind of level of, and like Antifa was activated and all sorts of things happened that were very, very outside of what would be acceptable if in the olden days, in the 90s, these things wouldn't be allowed to continue to happen. Although, again, maybe I just wasn't old enough and sophisticated enough in the 90s to see it then. Waco, right? Anyway, there's all sorts of things like that. But here's Nigel Farage. He's talking about the invasion in Britain. Here we go.
It is no deterrent. Everyone knows it. And whilst the numbers are down, if I'd said to you 5 years ago that, 30,000 young men would cross the English Channel in dinghies and be allowed to stay, I mean, you'd have thought I'd been smoking something. So the fact the numbers are not as bad as last year, frankly, to hang on to that is really cold comfort farm.
And also, we've learned in the last week that the government is placing contracts for managing the arrivals in Dover and at Manston up until 2030, about £700 million worth of contracts. But as you say, all of this, in a sense, is modest, although significant, compared to the other big news when you're away. The lawful immigration numbers increased by 20% in 22 to 745,000.
I mean, nobody did more to try and highlight the cross-channel problem than me, going out repeatedly into the channel, asking why our mainstream channels were not covering this issue. So I've sort of, in some senses, owned this from the beginning, and yet I am going to admit now it is very small beer compared to legal migration into Britain.
Same thing happening in Canada, right? So they're saying 30,000 channel crossers, 30,000 young men, fighting age young men crossing the channel in dinghies. This is terrible. This number is huge. It's a mass amount of people. We shouldn't be on the hook for it. Nigel Farage has taken lots of flack, political flack, for mentioning it, for talking about it. And he says those numbers are dwarfed by the legal migration into the United Kingdom. It's unbelievable. 745,000 people. They have a population of 70 million people. I think it is 70 million people, roughly. Canada used to have half the population of Britain, and then it was 30, and then it was like just over half, like 36 million people, and now we're at 40 million people. So it is interesting when I talk about Canada flooding our system and bringing in people we can't house, bringing in people we can't serve properly with the services that provinces are supposed to provide, known like education or healthcare, things like that. It's interesting as well. Doug Ford has waived the fee for license plates. You used to have to pay $80 for your license plate sticker, and you used to have to pay to every 5 years to update your license. You have to pay for the sticker. I can't remember if you had to pay for your license. I think you just had to renew your license. No cost to it unless you did something stupid or you had to pay a fine or something like that. Just a way to catch people who don't pay their tickets, I think. But fundamentally, the services aren't robust enough to serve the population we've got. And still, the federal government keeps increasing the immigration, and that's happening in other places too. And they say this is a literal invasion. And during that clip, they said there's funding for accepting these illegal migrants, the 30,000, in expanded ports in Dover and another place. And that's wild. Why is it the responsibility of England to take on these people and to house these people and their children and their progeny, et cetera, et cetera? Why is it their responsibility? Why is it our responsibility in Canada if somebody makes it to Canada and crosses at Roxham Road to house them and put them up in a hotel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? They've broken the law. They're not here. They can claim they're here escaping war, but why should we believe them, right? What evidence do they have of that? Which war are they running away from? Where are their wives and children, right? But there's all sorts of other questions as well. Even if there was a war that they were running away from, and Canada wrote for the UN Compact on Migration. So Canada changed the rules in the 2018 and 2019. I was reporting on it, but they changed the rules about it all. But fundamentally, it used to be a crime to do what is going on now. The taxpayer are being abused to fund non-taxpayer programs. For what? I don't know. For what purpose? Like, what do we get out of it? Nothing. The argument is the increase in population will make Canada really economically robust in the future. But we were more economically robust when we got our products to market, be that softwood lumber, be that LNG, liquid natural gas, or oil and gas, whatever it is, right? Whatever product we got to market. We were a much bigger financial player. We were punching above our weight when we were at 26 to 35 million people, because we actually utilized the riches in the country and exported them appropriately to a degree. I think there were room for improvement, as there always is, but holy smoke, right? And now we've totally hamstrung all of those products that Canada can make and sell. And the Liberals are just, they're hell-bent on destroying the rest of it too. And people don't understand. People are so far away. They're so detached from how electricity is made. They think that a solar panel will run your house or charge your car. I've had arguments with people about if you could run your house and car in Canada on a solar panel and batteries. And the woman said, well, I live in California and it works here. And I was like, well, in Canada, we have less than 6 hours of sunlight and snow. Like, it's not going to work here. Sorry, lady. Like, you can believe something all you want, but the reality of the situation is different than what you believe it to be. So here's some facts for you. And if you don't want to look into it, well, that's on you. But people don't want to look into it until they're smacked with reality. I've met people as well who bought solar panels and batteries, and they had to spend lots of money to repair the solar panels while the batteries were working. And then as the batteries started to die, they were like, F this, and they just took it all out because they said the maintenance costs was ridiculous. It was too high and it didn't make any sense. It didn't generate the power they expected it to generate. They expected to be able to not have to pay an electricity to lower their electricity bill costs, and it didn't do that. So it doesn't work. Regardless, let's move back onto immigration. And Maxime Bernier says, reasons are piling up to oppose mass migration, but the Trudeau-Poilievre-Singh Uniparty in Ottawa is working for its own selfish interests instead of those of Canadians, so they haven't noticed yet. Canada's recent turn towards record high immigration is already having measurable impacts on housing prices and employment numbers, but in a recent report, former Bank of Canada Governor David Dodge suggested that this is also eroding the country's competitiveness and long-term productivity. And this is, I guess, Globe and Mail? Maybe not. It says, first reading, how record high immigration could be hurting Canada's productivity. It's already measurably impacting housing and employment, but former Bank of Canada Governor David Dodge argues it could erode Canadian competitiveness. So the whole idea of mass migration to make Canada like a mover and a shaker economically is it's not coming to fruition, and they keep trying to double down and triple down. But all that's happening is housing is getting more expensive and the cost of living is going up. And that's not great. Here's Rex Glacier, and he says, cheap wartime homes. Here's an example of one, $465,000. That's $500,000. Like, I don't have the down payment for that. 2 bed, 1 bath, 1,113 square feet, built in 1938 in Meaford, Ontario. $465,000. I could have bought that thing for $60,000, like in 2010, I think. Not even $60,000. Darn it. Hold. Rex Glacier again is responding to Sean Fraser, and Fraser says simple pre-approved designs will reduce the cost of building and speed up construction. They've helped Canada overcome housing challenges in the past, and they will play a role in addressing the new challenges that we're seeing today. And Glacier says, prove it. What makes them cheaper? Where are you going to build them? Who's going to pay for the infrastructure, the water, the sewer, the schools, the police, the fire? As if builders don't already know how to build homes that sell. Nothing says it better than government pre-approved. Right? Here's your government cheese, right? No, that's not great. Here's Stephen, and he says, a thread with pictures. This government-run program that Sean Fraser, a Liberal MP, is speaking of led to many homes, but they were of poor quality. They were poorly insulated, as the idea was that energy was so cheap back then you could just keep the furnace running. How do I know this? Well, I lived in one of these homes from the year 2000 to 2005 at CFB Petawawa. This home was small, so small that I had to remove railings each time I wanted to move the mattress out of the house when we were moving. That's minor in nature, but the biggest problem was the leaky, cold house that led to ice buildup inside on the windows and in the closets. Or how about the overhang out over the foundation that had zero insulation? The best part was when I figured out why I kept getting mice in our house eating our food. The foundation had holes in it behind the preformed concrete steps that had been placed there sometime between when the house was built to us moving in. There's a government-run agency called the Canadian Forces Housing Agency, or CFHA for short, that is supposed to fix these problems. It literally took me standing in the local CFHA office for 3 hours, forcing the managers to finally come out and talk to me. It was eventually fixed, but only after I essentially forced the CFHA to do their jobs. So excuse me if I believe a government getting into the business of building and maintaining houses will be successful. Pictures follow. Wartime house that I lived in from 2000 to 2005. So, I mean, that looks like it'd be worth $500,000 easy. Jeepers Creepers. Should have held on to that one, buddy. Here's the picture of the front porch with the wood fascia there, I guess, and preformed concrete steps moved away from the front door. And can you see why they had mice? There are giant, massive holes in the foundation that lead directly inside, and then there's a little drop box that would be nice and warm in the winter for mice, right? And he says the insulation was wet and smelly with mice pee and was full of mice feces, and mice feces were found throughout the house. So yeah, man, government housing is right up there with government cheese. Not great. Ryan Garrettson says, Trudeau would say that these people are experiencing camping differently. This was a baseball diamond in Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia. It's now a home for Canadians, but let's keep bringing people in and giving our money away. Hey, Trudeau, sunny ways. So this is an encampment that is allowed to be to exist on a baseball diamond. Like, this is a public structure. And why would we have people who have not purchased land, who have not paid taxes or anything like that, able to pitch tents in public land? It doesn't make any sense. Crown land, okay, that's a different thing. Like, this is public land that taxes paid for to make into a baseball diamond, not to a migrant camp, right? And so, like, why does Canada have refugee tent camps now? Here's part of this. It's got debris everywhere. There's two So like the truckers got in trouble for this. There's propane tanks, and I don't know if that's how you safely store propane tanks, empty or full, but they're in a barrel, which seems again like a really bad idea. Like like an outdoor barrel that you would imagine in the 1930s. There were a bunch of people who were traveling the trains trying to find work, and they were, they've got their tin and their spoon, and they're heating up their tin by the fire. But it's full of propane tanks. So, they've probably got a Coleman stove somewhere that uses the propane tanks. But still, they've got these pallets to walk on. So they're walking on pallets so they don't have to walk on the muddy baseball diamond. You can see the baseball diamond in the background. There's baseball lights in the background too. How is this an acceptable plan? Come to Canada, and we know that you won't be able to afford housing or food, but, stay in this tent encampment, and, hopefully Walmart will have a Coleman stove for you. This is an insane. It doesn't make any kind of sense as a plan if you wanted to solve any problems for the Canadian people whatsoever. And it seems predatory to tell people in foreign countries, come to Canada, there's all these opportunities. Like, do they mean free land on the former baseball diamond? Is that the opportunity they're talking about? It's insane. Dr. Moffat says, this should scare the heck out of all of us. And Ron Butler goes through a thread, but the thread's title is new home construction grinding to a halt in Ontario? Maybe, and that's very bad news. And not Ed Norton says, further, I saw this the other day, and if it's true, that's a lot of supply, prices fall. No? And so this is just a map of houses for sale, and it's it's a very macro map. There's 5,000 in one circle, 31,000 in another circle, 4,000 in a circle near Hamilton, 2,000 closer to Sarnia, quite a lot, over almost 2,000 up by Sudbury there. So there's 3,000 over in Owen Sound. So it's very, very high supply, it seems. So that is interesting and could impact prices, but maybe not. Ron Butler says, is new home construction grinding to a halt in Ontario? Maybe, and that's very bad news. I like to listen to what people on the ground say, tradespeople, subcontractors, new home sales agents, and it sounds bad. Most projects that commenced are absolutely getting completed, although you can drive around the GTA and Hamilton area and see a few condo towers where work has clearly stopped. Not a lot of them, but a few, and that must be worrisome as heck for the people who gave deposits. But what I'm hearing more about is new project sales offices closing. The developer just decides market conditions aren't right and shuts the project down till later. It's hard to get solid stats on this. What businesses will ever announce, yeah, looks like we're screwed? Simple reasons behind it: high mortgage rates and depressed buyers' sentiment. You can't start a new housing project without pre-sales, and the new twist is that even if people are interested in placing a deposit, the builder is insisting on rock-solid verified mortgage pre-approvals from banks. Bottom line is new building is slowing drastically because people can't finance the cost of it. Here's a news flash. New Canadians are still arriving in Ontario. Where does this combination of more people and depressed new home construction lead to? It leads to higher house prices and higher unmanageable rents. Once again, we see a planning disaster from the government. Do they care? It looks like they're oblivious. Sometime in the next 2 years, officials will announce that we were surprised by the sudden decline in new home construction that started in 2023. Count on incompetence. So they're going to claim incompetence, but none of this is actually incompetence. And that's problematic because we should have responsible people who are willing to take responsibility for their bad planning or their lack of planning. Instead, these people will say, oh, we didn't know. Blacklock reporter says, moving on a little bit, this is for the $1 billion slush fund. And MPs said to the whistleblower, can you prove it? The whistleblower said, are you kidding? We have emails spilling out of the filing cabinet. And so that's the $150 million paid to Friends of Sustainable Development Technology Canada. So this is a big scandal. It's expanding. It's as big as the WE scandal, probably bigger than the WE scandal if we're honest about it. But it's one of those things where if the public doesn't understand the scandal, then the public is not going to be upset about it. And I think not that the public doesn't quite understand the scandal yet, but they don't understand the scope and the depth of it. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, proverbially. The projections. This I thought was very funny, but just in context of this. So here is the Christmas message, and it's very benign. It's a minute long. It feels, it's a minute and a half long. Oh, almost 2 minutes, I guess, 1:49. It feels a lot longer than 2 minutes. Here's just a little bit of this Christmas message. We'll get to the part where they talk about our accomplishments. And I think the reason that Bill Blair has so many extra helpers is because he doesn't speak French. Here we go.
2023 has been a busy and productive year. Whether overseas or here at home, our institution has been called upon time after time to deliver results for Canada. And as we approach the holidays, I'd like to sincerely thank everyone at the Department of National Defence and the Canadian Armed Forces for rising to meet the call of service and for keeping Canada safe.
As we head into the holiday season, we say thank you to the Defence Team. Le temps des fêtes se veut un moment pour réfléchir à toutes les personnes et aux choses pour lesquelles nous sommes reconnaissants.
A time to look back at our accomplishments and a time to be proud of the challenges we have overcome.
Okay, so let's look back at our accomplishments in the last year in the Canadian military. Okay, this is from round Remembrance Day, Note the Poppy. Here is one of the accomplishments in 2023 that Bill Blair and the whole brass of the Canadian military are talking about. Here we go.
Telling me that inflation is so bad in Canada that active current members of our Canadian Armed Forces cannot afford the cost of living and are having to come to you for help.
That is correct. And I can also tell you that we have active, currently serving members of the Canadian Armed Forces living in cars. The housing crisis is such that we have, over the past year, seen 3 veterans who have been posted to areas where they cannot afford housing and are living in their cars. So getting ready for work in the morning, putting their uniform on, and going to work in Canadian Armed Forces. So yes, that is in fact very.
Telling me that inflation.
So I'd be working for a deployment, I think. Could I go anywhere but here? That's pretty wild, right? These guys are like the top brass. These guys know that they have service members who can't afford a house, who can't afford rent. They're being deployed to places they can't afford anything, and they're living in their cars. And they're saying, happy holidays, holy smoke. Like, enjoy your matzah, right? Like, how out of touch can you get? Here's Wall Street Silver again. He's highlighting Canada. He says the Liberal government of Justin Trudeau has sent over $5 billion of taxpayer money towards foreign aid. Meanwhile, 2 million Canadians line up at food banks each month. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty funny. Here's cash aid from Canada to the Clinton Foundation, that's $600 million, to Hamas, $351 million, Pakistan, $2 billion, Libya, $1.45 billion, $397 million to Egypt, $622 million to Mexico. Russia gets $380 million. Really? I wonder what year this is. This has got to be outdated. This is like from 2021 or something like that, or 2020, maybe 2019. Congo, $359 million. Ethiopia, $981 million. I remember showing you, I think it was Ethiopia. They had Government of Canada branded "Don't Poop on the Beach" posters. And Michelle Rempel was like, yeah, this is great. This is a good use of money. We're helping. Like, what? Honestly, I feel like Ralph Wiggum, right? We're helping. Canada, just be quiet. Sit down and stop talking. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful